Okay, you've got a little bit of difficulty falling back to sleep. What are you gonna do about that? I can tell you what you shouldn't do. First thing you shouldn't do is you shouldn't look at the clock.
The single worst thing you can do when you wake up at 3 a.m., and almost everyone does it, is look at the clock. Don't. Turn it away before you go to bed tonight. I'll explain why in a minute. So, this is something I hear about almost every week in my practice. People come in and they're not complaining about not being able to fall asleep. That part's usually fine. What they're describing is something slightly different. They go off fine, sleep well for a few hours, and then somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning they're wide awake. Fully awake, ceiling staring, brain already running. And the harder they try to get back to sleep, the further away it gets. My wife went through a patch of this about 2 years ago. Same time every night, almost to the minute. And what struck me was that she never actually asked me about it. She just assumed it was one of those things. Accepted it. And when she did mention it, I realized I'd never sat down and explained to her what's actually going on, which is something I should have done years earlier, frankly. So that's what I want to do today. 2 things. First, I want to explain why this happens because I think understanding the biology takes some of the fear out of it. That 3 a.m. panic is partly about the waking itself, but it's mostly about not knowing why. And second, I want to give you 5 specific things you can actually do in the moment when you find yourself lying there at that hour. Not vague suggestions, things that work. And if you stay to the end, I'll tell you the one habit that makes the whole problem worse. Almost everybody does it, and it costs you nothing to stop. Why your body picks 3 a.m. and why it's not random. Here's the thing that most people don't know, and I think it's worth understanding because it changes how you feel about the whole situation. Your body runs on a roughly 24-hour hormone cycle. One of the key hormones in that cycle is cortisol, which most people know as the stress hormone, though that's a bit of an unfair name for it. Cortisol is actually your body's natural get-going signal. It's what helps you feel alert and functional in the morning. And here's the relevant bit. It doesn't just switch on when your alarm goes off. It starts rising somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, climbing gradually, so that by the time you actually wake up, you're getting close to the peak. Under normal circumstances, that early rise is quiet enough that you sleep right through it. But if your system is a little overloaded from stress, from disrupted routines, from the way sleep itself changes as we get older, that rise can fire a bit earlier or a bit steeper than it should. And that's enough to pull you out of sleep that a colleague of mine who works in sleep medicine put it in a way I've never forgotten. She said the body isn't randomly waking you up at 3 a.m. It's getting ready for morning. The timing is just off. Now, why some people are more prone to this than others, I genuinely don't have a clean answer for you. The research suggests stress and disrupted sleep patterns play a role, but exactly why it affects some people and not others isn't something I can give you a satisfying explanation for. What I can tell you is that it's common, it has a real biological cause, and it's not a sign that something is badly wrong. There's also a structural reason it happens in the second half of the night specifically. The deep, slow, restorative sleep, the kind that leaves you feeling genuinely rested, mostly happens in the first few hours after you drop off. By 2 or 3 a.m., you've moved into lighter sleep. You're in a stage where the brain surfaces much more easily. So when that cortisol starts to rise, there's much less keeping you under. Tip 1, don't look at the clock, right? So you're awake. It's somewhere around 3 a.m. And the first thing most people do, almost automatically, is look at the clock. I used to do this too. You look at the time, your brain does the maths. It's 10 past 3. I need to be up at 7. That's less than 4 hours. And within about 30 seconds, you're more awake than you were before you open your eyes. Because now you've got a problem to solve. And a brain at 3 a.m., given a problem, will work on it all night. Turn the clock away. Or put it on the other side of the room. I mean that as a genuine instruction, not a throwaway suggestion. If your phone is your alarm, put it face down, somewhere you can't reach from the bed without getting up. Remove the reflex entirely. The same goes for looking at your phone. It's even worse than the clock because now you've got the screen light, which interferes with the sleep hormones, and you've got whatever's on the screen, messages, news, notifications, all coming in at a time when your brain is completely undefended and unusually sensitive to it. There's a wider principle behind this too, and it comes from what's called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, CBTI, which is the gold standard clinical approach for persistent sleep problems. One of its core ideas is that the longer you lie awake in bed feeling anxious and frustrated, the more your brain starts to associate the bed itself with that feeling. The bed stops being a place that signals sleep and starts being a place that signals worry. And once that association is established, it becomes self-reinforcing. So the clock is the first thing to deal with. Not because of the time, but because of what the time makes you do. Tip 2. Try the 4-7-8 breathing method. Now, for the techniques themselves. And I want to be clear here, I'm not talking about medication. I'm not talking about supplements. I'm talking about things you can do with your body and your attention right there in bed at 3 a.m. The second one, and the one I try first, is a breathing method called 4-7-8. Breathe in through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for 7, and breathe out slowly through your mouth for 8. Then repeat 3 or 4 cycles. The long exhale is the key part. When you breathe out slowly, you're activating what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that tells your body to stand down. Heart rate drops. The stress response quiets. It's essentially a direct line into the calming side of your nervous system, and the count gives your brain something to focus on that isn't the problem it was trying to solve. A psychologist I know, she works primarily with anxiety, not sleep specifically, uses this with patients who are in the middle of a panic response. She says it's one of the few techniques that works fast enough to matter when you're in the grip of something. The principle at 3 a.m. is exactly the same. You're not panicking, but your brain is in a similar kind of overactivation. I'll leave a link in the description with a good summary of the evidence behind breathing techniques for sleep. It's not a heavy academic paper, just something readable if you want to understand why this works. If 4-7-8 feels like a lot to remember at 3 in the morning, there's a simpler version, box breathing. 4 counts in, hold 4, 4 counts out, hold 4. Less elegant, same principle. Tip 3, do the cognitive shuffle. Here's the problem with breathing exercises for some people. You do the breathing, and it helps a little, but the moment you finish, the thoughts come straight back. The to-do list. The conversation you didn't handle well. The appointment next week. The thing you forgot to sort out. This is where a technique called cognitive shuffling comes in. And I'll be upfront, when I first read about it, I thought it sounded too simple. But I've had patients come back and tell me it was the thing that finally worked, so I've kept recommending it. Here's how it works. You pick a neutral word, any word, it genuinely doesn't matter. Let's say garden. You take the first letter, G, and you start visualizing random, unrelated objects that start with that letter. A grape, a guitar, a goat, a gatepost. You spend a couple of seconds on each image, seeing it as clearly as you can, then move to the next one. When you run out of G words, you move to A, and so on. The reason it works is that your brain, when it's anxious, is in problem-solving mode. It's looking for connected things, consequences, causes, plans. Random, unrelated images don't give it anything to build on. It can't make a story out of a grape, a guitar, and a goat. So it eventually just lets go. And that's when sleep creeps back in. My wife tried this. She was fairly skeptical, I'll be honest, and she fell asleep somewhere in the middle of the second letter. I count that as a professional win. Now, I want to mention something before I move on, because it connects to what I'm going to cover next. There's a reason the order of these techniques matters, and it relates to what you should do when none of them are working. I'll come back to that in a moment, because I think the context helps. Tip 4. Get out of bed after 20 minutes. Tip 4. And this one goes against every instinct. You've turned the clock away. You've done the breathing. You've tried the imagery. And you're still lying there, more alert than before. This is the moment most people try harder. They press their eyes shut. They will themselves towards sleep. They negotiate with their body. That's the wrong move. If you've been awake for around 20 minutes and you can feel your body getting more tense rather than less, get up. Go to a different room. Turn on a dim lamp, not the overheads. Find something boring and quiet. A magazine, a podcast at low volume, nothing with a plot you care about. Sit there until you feel genuinely sleepy. Not tired, sleepy. There's a difference. Then go back to bed. This feels like giving up. It isn't. Getting out of bed is actually the smarter move because it breaks the association I mentioned earlier between the bed and the frustrated wakefulness. The more time you spend lying awake in bed, trying and failing to sleep, the stronger that association gets. Getting up and coming back only when sleep is actually close keeps the bed connected to what it's supposed to be connected to. Some of my patients resist this one. But if I get up, I'll be exhausted the next day. Maybe. But if you stay in bed anxious for 2 hours, you won't be sleeping much anyway, and the next night will be harder. Getting up is counterintuitive, but it's what the evidence supports. The clinical term for this is stimulus control, and it's one of the core components of CBTI. I'll leave a plain English link to that in the description for anyone who wants to go deeper. It's worth knowing about, especially if the 3 a.m. waking is something you're dealing with regularly. Tip 5. Write your worry list before bed. Tip 5, and this one is for a slightly different situation. Some people wake at 3 a.m. not because their mind is running, but because their body won't settle. Shoulders tight, jaw clenched, that restless feeling in the legs. Thoughts aren't really the problem, but something physical is keeping sleep away. For those nights, I try progressive muscle relaxation. Start at your feet. Tense every muscle in your feet hard. Hold for 5 seconds, then let go completely. Move up to your calves, then your thighs. Work your way upward, one group at a time. I first learned about this properly from a physiotherapist I used to work alongside years ago. She used it for patients in pain who were struggling to sleep. Not because it addressed the pain directly, but because physical tension and mental alertness reinforce each other. Release one, and you start to release the other. Most people I've suggested this to fall asleep somewhere around their knees. I've genuinely never had anyone report making it all the way to their shoulders. When it's worth mentioning to your doctor, I want to be straight with you about something. Most middle of the night waking is normal. Inconvenient, frustrating, but normal. But there are a few patterns that are worth raising with your GP, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention them. Sleep apnea is one. If you're waking up and you're not sure why, no thoughts, no needing the bathroom, just suddenly awake, and especially if you snore, or if a partner has ever mentioned you seem to stop breathing or gasp during the night, that's something to bring up. Sleep apnea is genuinely common, particularly as we get older, and it's very treatable. But a lot of people don't know they have it because they're asleep when it happens. Waking to go to the bathroom is another one. If that's what's pulling you up at 3 a.m., it's worth knowing that in many cases it's something that can be improved. Sometimes just by adjusting when you drink fluids in the evening, sometimes by reviewing medication timing with your GP or pharmacist. And if the waking is happening against a background of low mood, persistent anxiety, or just not feeling yourself, that's relevant information too. Sleep and mental health are deeply connected, and sometimes addressing one is the most direct route to improving the other. I can't tell you through a screen what's driving your particular pattern. What I can tell you is what to notice, what you can actually do starting tonight. So 5 things, and I want to go through them in order because the order matters. Tip 1, turn the clock away tonight. Right now if you want. If your phone is your alarm, move it across the room. Remove the ability to do the maths. Tip 2, when you wake before your brain gets going, start the 4-7-8 breathing. For in, hold 7, out for 8. 3 cycles. You're interrupting the arousal before it builds into something. Tip 3, if thoughts start coming, pick a word and start the letter game. Random images, nothing connected. Keep going. It works better the less seriously you take it. Tip 4, if you're still awake after about 20 minutes, get up. Dim light, not the phone. Something dull. Come back when you feel sleepy, not just tired. And tip 5, this one is preventive rather than in the moment. Spend 5 minutes before bed writing down whatever is circling. Not journaling, not processing, just a list. Things to do, things that are worrying you. Getting them out of your head and onto paper tells your brain they're captured. It often stops going looking for them at 3 a.m. Most people who've had a run of broken nights are convinced it means something is badly wrong. More often, it just means you're human and your sleep is doing something very normal, very inconveniently. The good news is there are real things you can do about it. I hope tonight's a better one. If this was useful, I put a new video out most weeks, you're welcome to follow along. And if there's something specific you'd like me to cover, drop in the comments. I do read them.